And we're live! Good morning, everybody! I acknowledge the traditional owners of this land. I pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and to Aboriginal elders and peoples from other communities who may be taking part in this live stream today. Welcome, everybody! I've got to wake myself up. Do I have audio? Yes, it appears that I do. At least OBS thinks I do. So I think we are all right. Gil, okay. Let's start with the breathing exercises. Good morning, Frank, Gil, Aaron, Chip, Pancake, James. Working back up the list. Amanda, some call it fun. Who did I miss anyone? I don't know. Hello, everybody. I hope you're all doing well on this fine Sunday morning. And for some people, it's just after midnight. So I still claim that as Sunday morning. It's just probably not your favorite part of the Sunday morning. Hey, James, good morning and evening from yesterday in Canada. Oh, Iggy is here too. G'day. All right, straight in with the deep questions, the hard questions. James wants to know any updates on ability to work as an engineer in Australia. Only one very minor update, which is that my friend Bob, who is actually like a legit engineer and has all the proper memberships and qualifications, the whole bit, has he got some information from Engineers Australia or whoever it was, and because of the way the certification stuff is being rolled out in increments. It's every 6 months, I think, they add a new category that needs to be covered. And the short version, sorry, brain going all over the place. The short version is for electronic engineering that doesn't start for another 2 years. So there is a 2-year window in which to figure it out, which unfortunately is not enough time for me to go off and get a degree, because it takes more than 3 years to do it takes more than 2 years to do like a bachelor's degree and do all the stuff that's necessary. And then you need to be able to work independently as an engineer. You then need to work supervised for 2 years, I think it is, directly supervised by a professional engineer. So I couldn't even work independently after that. Anyway, yeah. Yes. Oh, he says a former colleague is or was president of EA in Canberra, and even he could not call himself an engineer under the new rules. He thought it was stupid. Yeah, so EA, I assume that means Engineers Australia. Alrighty. Yes, Sion, we'll all be out of business in 2 years. No, Sion, by 2 years from now, we will be so rich that we can retire independently wealthy, and it won't matter. I'm going to hang on to that dream. Oh, all right. And Celtic Bee says, surely you'd be exempt from several university units because of your experience. Yes. And I did actually go to uni for a while. I didn't finish. I actually went to, when I started, it was called Chisholm Institute of Technology, and then it merged and became part of Monash University. I started a Bachelor of Applied Science in Robotics and Digital Technology. So I do actually have part of that. I've already actually done part of the necessary qualifications, but I didn't finish. I left before I finished, and I was off designing stuff, actually designing stuff for cars. I was doing a bit of automotive electronics and a few other miscellaneous jobs. My life went off on a bit of a winding course for a while. Dodgy! Welcome, Dodgy. And so the other thing is I could probably do... Frank has a good question. We'll get to topics in a moment. So the other thing is I could almost certainly go... Well, not almost certainly. That's the wrong way of putting it. it looks like I could probably go straight into a master's degree and skip the bachelor's entirely. But even that is 2 years, and there are questions about the prerequisites for the specific master's degrees that are necessary to become recognized as a professional engineer. So it's kind of an annoying topic. Oh, frustrating. All right, Frank. So I started the live stream today with pretty much a blank slate. Not really sure what to do. Scott says, I'm doing my first stint at uni at 53, way too hard if you also have to work. Yeah, I would have to work because I can't afford to just not work for a couple of years. That's, yeah, I don't have, Chip, coffee. Okay, that is a good suggestion. I think I need it. All right. So if you get, the cat has a question as well. Can I program a Ptz camera to move and zoom based on where motion occurs for chip with something like a Node MCU or Home Assistant? All right, there are some good things to follow up. Yes, and as Dodgy says, follow the squirrel. All right. Squirrels. There are a couple of squirrels that have come up so far. Frank had a question which was PoE, lighting 12 volt power. Does this work or fad? That is an interesting subject, and I would really like to hear from other people. I know we've talked about that particular subject before on the live stream. People have had opinions on it, and what I said last time was I was kind of skeptical about PoE lighting. It seemed like a solution in search of a problem, and I didn't really understand it. The only way I can justify or understand the fact that there are PoE lighting panels in existence, the only reason they exist is companies that are already heavily invested in PoE, like Unify, which make Ethernet switches with PoE, and they've started trying to diversify. They want to have a broader product range which incorporates add-ons that can tie into their whole ecosystem. So they make Ethernet switches with PoE. They make wireless access points that are powered by the PoE, delivered by those switches. They've now introduced access control, so you can get like an NFC or an RFID access control system that mounts beside a door, and then their management system can adopt that, and then you can control the door locks using their access control system. So when a company is invested in a particular technology platform like that, so they are very heavily invested in PoE and Ethernet, then it makes sense for them to start to sit around and think, what can we make that we could plug into Ethernet? And at one of those review meetings, like some product planning meeting, someone said, hey, we could make lights. And you could run power over Ethernet through your ceiling and plug it into the light fitting, and then you've got power coming from the Ethernet and you can control the lights over Ethernet. So they made them. But I don't know if that is because, if the existence of this product is because it's actually a problem that needs to be solved, or whether it's for that reason. It was a bunch of people sitting around in a boardroom having a marketing discussion, trying to brainstorm products. What can we make that will plug into Ethernet? So, yeah. Terry says, Unify PoE lighting looks dim. Scott Miller said, POBW makes a hell of a lot more sense for lighting. What is PO? I've never heard that acronym before. Or maybe I've heard it in a different form. Did I hear the word adopt? Sounds like you need an AP. Yeah, so... Oh, and cameras, that's the other thing. Yes, PoE cameras. PoE cameras, of course, make sense. That's a really good thing. And as Peter says, in all fairness, their PoE lights are meant to complement the camera solutions. Yes. Oh, Scott, power over bloody wires. POBW. Yes. But yeah, Peter makes a good point. So in all fairness, PoE lights are meant to complement the camera solution. So, and if you have a, say you have an, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a scenario, a shop. I was going to say office building, but it makes a little bit less sense. Say you've got a facility and you have Unify gear with Unify power over Ethernet cameras so that you can see, you can monitor stuff. And this ties into, there was a comment earlier about motion detection on cameras, so hopefully we'll get back to that before too long. So if you have a system which is monitoring your cameras and it can do things like motion detection, perhaps it makes sense for it to be able to do things like turn the lights on automatically. You could use the cameras as a form of occupancy detection. So if you had a hall, like a hall in a hotel, and cameras in the hallway, someone walks down the hall, turns all the lights on. So, and of course, if you wanted to, if you had some kind of a security event, you've got a camera that's surveilling an area, something's going on, you want to be able to turn all the lights on so you can see what's happening. Mike, wait, they have wires for that now? Yes. Yeah. Oh, hi from Mexico, Seoul. Yeah. Yeah, I know Intermittent Tech. So Intermittent Tech has a YouTube channel where he covers LED stuff a lot as well. So Johnny just pointed out Intermittent Tech did a live stream yesterday showing how fat cables LED light strips really needs. There was smoke. Yeah. Yeah, I know Intermittent has opinions on this as well from personal experience. My general feeling is a little bit of bafflement about it. I'm not entirely sure where it makes sense, but perhaps there are scenarios where it does. So, oh, Andy says, it just makes sense to integrate power, preferably not mains, no, and control into a single cable. Although, structured building cabling, that's a whole other thing. And control into a single cable. PoE for cameras is a thing. Now we just expect USB to power devices. Perhaps USB might overtake PoE, except for the distance thing. So running USB over 30 or 40 or 50 meters, you'd have a few problems with the cable, I think. I'm just going to move my chat up here so I can see it more easily and still be kind of looking at you. Yeah, so structured cabling. I remember this was a big thing a couple of years ago. So there are a number of industry magazines that I get. There's there's an electronics trade show in Australia. I've gone blank on its name. It's like a corny play on words name, and I just can't remember it. And someone's going to put it in the chat, I'm sure. And it used to happen every year, once in Sydney, once in Melbourne, alternating. And at some point I went along to that trade show and made the mistake of putting my name down for some industry magazines. And ever since then I've been getting magazines in the mail. There's there was Connected Home, Electronex, that's it, thanks Iggy. Scott said, useful thought experiment, power loss over the length of an Ethernet cable. Yeah, I actually did that calculation. In fact, I did that in a video showing the voltage drop across the cable. It was a video, video must be like 7 or 8 years ago. I did a video talking about power over Ethernet and how it works. And I showed the voltage drop. So maybe it's the memory issue with names gets worse with age, trust me. Yes, voltage drop would be a big issue for PoE lighting. So for PoE lighting, you really would not want to do it with the classic DIY PoE, which is where you typically put 12 volts down the line because the voltage drop just becomes a bit of an issue. You'd really want to be doing 48 volt PoE to minimize that voltage drop. So for those who haven't come across that before, just a very quick recap. The power that is dissipated in a resistor is, I won't go through it right now, but it's based on the current. So if you want to get a certain number of watts through a bit of wire, if you run it at higher voltage and lower current, you get the same amount of power, but you get less voltage drop and you get less power emitted, so it heats up less. So what was I looking at? I was looking for something. There was something in my mind I had to get. Voltage drop equals heat in the cables. Yes, exactly. Now, there was... I was going to get something out. Anyway, I won't. Yes. Yeah, Scott says, as a Sparky, it scares the heck out of me once people start doing this DIY. Yep. I'm sure you've seen bad things. Yeah, James says the formula is heat is equal to the square of the current. That's right. So the yeah, what was it? P equals I squared R, something like that. So battery to fire to light, yeah. And because it's actually the square of the current, it means that if you the benefits of going to a higher voltage are actually much more than you would expect. So if you double the voltage, you halve the current and you effectively have 1/4 as much loss on power. So, and vice versa. I think that's the way it works. I don't know. I was going to get something, but no, I won't. All right. Station 240. Ooh, this could be starting an argument now. All the dodgy wiring in my house was the work of qualified electricians. Yeah, and Scott says, I have 110 volts AC in all areas of my house, minimal power loss due to distance. Why in heck would I want to try and force sufficient power through skinny little Ethernet to run lights? That's basically the logic. Yes. So, although I've got to admit, first time I went to the US, when was it? I don't remember. It was decades ago. It was a long time ago. I went over for it was because I was speaking at OzCon, and it was the first time I had ever seen 110 volt appliances and cords and things, and I thought it was like a joke. The power cables in the US are like garden hoses because they only run at 110 volts. And once again, it's this whole square law for loss on current. You know, power cables running at 110 volts versus running at 220 or 240 volts, like here in Australia. Okay, 230 is the Australian standard. That I'm not going to open that particular can of worms. There is the whole issue of different states running running different power. Like in Victoria, I think it's very commonly around 243 volts. But anyway, let's not talk about that one. Yeah, so as Stephen said, they also do 15 amps instead of 10 amps. So the what is the main subject of today's live stream? There isn't one. This is one of those random squirrel chasing live streams, unless we get onto a particular topic. So far, that topic is PoE lighting, and I've just been rambling about that. But one thing I am interested in is getting back to that question that was way back near the start of the chat about motion tracking. Hang on, I'm going to... Okay. There was a question. Sophie the cat said, can I program a Ptz camera, so Ptz is pan tilt zoom camera, to move and zoom based on where motion occurs for cheap with something like a Node MCU or Home Assistant? All right. Now, the very, very short answer is no. The slightly longer answer, we could get into this in a fair bit. Okay, you need to think about a couple of things. The first question is how you're going to detect the motion. The second part of it, well, there are really... Okay, if you think about it in terms of building blocks, you could actually divide it down into more building blocks than this, but there are really two main tasks. The first task is detecting and locating the motion. And to do that is not necessarily easy. There are some cameras that have that sort of functionality built into them, but typically that would be done by some kind of an external system running either just an algorithm that detects pixel changes in regions and then reports back the areas where it's changed. And there are systems like Blue Iris, I think, that can do that. There are basically network video recorders. So if you take the feed from the camera and then you process it in an external piece of software, that software can probably detect where in the field of view the motion or the object or whatever it is located. And you can also do that using machine learning systems. So simple motion detection algorithms just detect things like changes in pixels. If you've got, what it does essentially is you take a snapshot. This is like a very simplistic way of thinking about it. Take a snapshot of like a picture, and then you take a moment later, you take another picture of the exact same scene, and then you subtract one picture from the other. So every place that those two images are the same, you just delete it. So what happens then is you are left with a picture that has only the differences between them. And then what you can do is localize where there are areas of change. And if you have a certain thing in the scene that's moving, that will be changed between the two frames of the video. Now there are many, many different ways of doing that, and there are things like OpenCV libraries that will help you do that. But there are also cameras that have that sort of functionality built in. Now, where was it? Someone just made a comment. Oh, Frank Martinez, the camera has that feature built in, Pelco D tracking camera. Yep. So, oh, and Frigate NVR would tie in with that. It does object detection and provides coordinates for the object. Thanks, Alistair. Yeah, so there are a few different ways of dealing with that in terms of the detection and the localization. So figuring out the X and Y coordinates of where the thing is. So then the other part of it is controlling the camera so that it centers on the motion. And if that's built into the camera and it's got motion tracking, like, which one was it? Someone, Pelco D. Ooh, I just read back and said Alistair. So Alistair made the comment earlier about Frigate NVR, which does object detection and provides coordinates for the object. And Alistair then said, I'm dropping an LCA talk proposal on that at the moment. Cool. Go for it, Alistair. Okay, little squirrel to chase. What time does the LCA submission finish? Is it 3 o'clock? I don't know, but I'm pretty sure the LCA submission process finishes today. All right, very brief squirrel chase. If you have done something cool and you would like to talk at linux.conf.au or LCA about it in January, which is going to be an online conference, so you can do your talk via video, then you have a few hours left to submit a proposal. And so if you have done something cool, you should go and do that. I haven't submitted a proposal yet because I don't think I've done anything cool. Oh, midnight tonight, Alistair, thanks. So there's still a few hours left. Yeah, all right. So, undoing that and so taking that subroutine off the stack and moving back to where we were, tracking cameras. So Mobius said, is Sonoff pronounced S-on-off or son-off? That is a very good question, and I think the original, Scott said I should submit a talk on OXRS. I am actually planning to submit a talk on that to the Open Hardware MiniConf. So if you've got an idea about hardware in particular, submit to the Open Hardware Miniconf. I'm not entirely sure that that would be a useful subject for the main Linux conference, because it's sort of straying a bit too much into hardware and building physical stuff rather than the software side of it, which is more what LCA is about. All right. So closing at midnight Australian Eastern Standard Time, and it is currently 10:30 in the morning, so you have 13 and a half hours in which to submit your proposal for LinuxConf. Now, as Mobius wanted to know, is Sonoff pronounced S-on-off or Sonoff? Now the thing is that I think that this has changed. Originally, the actual original meaning of the name was S for switch, on or off. It was just like a contraction of switch on off, and then it got turned into a single word. And I have a feeling that what happened was that because it was introduced by IT'd, who have not really produced a whole lot of content on it. It's one of those things where you see something written down, so in your head you figure out how to say it without ever hearing it spoken. And I think what happened is that most people, when they saw it originally, just literally pronounced it phonetically. So like I call it Sonoff, because in the early days I saw it written as S-O-N-O-F-F, and I just read it exactly as I said it. And it was only later that I realized what the actual meaning was meant to be for it. It was meant to be switch on off, in which case it should probably be S on off. But yes, anywhere on earth. Cool, thanks, Mike. Yeah. I think it's one of those things where the original intention of the people that came up with the name was that it would be S on off, and then it became, everyone just started calling it Sonoff because we didn't know any better, and that's what stuck. So yes. All right, but we haven't yet Andy has put in a link and said, if you'd like to propose a 30-minute talk to the LCA 2022 Open Hardware Mini Conference, we'd be very appreciative. And there is a link there that Andy has put in. So yes, please go and do that. But I haven't yet finished wrapping up this whole thing about motion tracking. So, sorry, Sophie the cat, I think it was, who asked the question. I can't remember. So the question specifically mentioned Node MCU. And what were the two things? There was Node MCU. They were kind of slightly unrelated technologies. I'm scrolling back now trying to find the original question, which is lost to the mists of time. I'm sorry. Oh, here we go. With something like a Node MCU or Home Assistant. Okay, so I'm wondering how those particular things would help you solve that problem. I suspect not very well. What you really need is either a camera with the tracking feature built in, which means you can't just use a cheap PTZ that you can get, grab off AliExpress or whatever. If your objective is to start, so the flippant answer is to say, go and buy a camera that does it, but then of course expense, all that sort of thing. If your objective is to do this with a camera that has pan tilt zoom and a video feed and nothing else, so it doesn't have any built-in intelligence, it can only do what it is told to do, then you need some external system that is going to process that video feed and that is going to send commands back to the camera to do things like move it to bring the object of interest into the center of the field of view. So it sounds like that is the sort of thing that Alistair knows all about. So if you send that that video feed into a piece of software that can process the video feed, either using something like OpenCV to detect motion, or that software that Alistair was mentioning earlier, I'm gonna scroll it back. Where was it? Alistair mentioned a piece of software which I had not heard of before, but sounds like it's definitely worth investigating. Which has it? Oh, there we go. Pelco D. Pelco D. This is an interesting squirrel to chase. For controller pan. Ah, okay, interesting. So Pelco D is an industry standard protocol for controller pan tilt zoom cameras, typically used over an RS485 serial line. Interesting. So it's not really a piece of software as such. It's a way of connecting things together. So if you've got a simple Ptz camera, then it is probably not going to have an RS485 interface and support Pelco D. It will probably have firmware in it that exposes a web interface and will need, really annoyingly, a lot of them actually do things like use ActiveX controls, which is just blah. Or they require something like a Java applet. What's the terminology? A Java applet running in the browser in order to provide you the user interface, and then you click on the buttons and it sends the commands back to the camera to make it move. Integrating with those cameras could be frustrating and annoying. Yeah, so Stephen says most PTZ I've used was via OnVIF. Yeah, so OnVIF is another standard that is pretty much universal. And yeah, I need to deploy panoramic cameras now. Alistair says, what was that in relation to? So replying to Aaron, oh, Aaron says, buy a 360 camera, done, no tracking needed. Yeah. Instead of deciding what you're going to record, just record everything in every direction all the time. And then you can look where you want to look. Yes, a buttload of data to analyze. It is, hang on, Cable Tie said, why is John humming the ABC News theme? I didn't even know I was humming. Was I? Maybe I was. Yeah, okay. Scott says, I find the lack of good IP cameras with narrow field of view annoying. Narrow field, yeah. IP cameras do tend, I mean, the better ones obviously you can spec in different lens types, and they have interchangeable lenses, typically like C-mount lenses and things. But cheap IP cameras typically go for a wide field of view, which then causes distortion effects and things as well, because a lot of the time you want at least a 90-degree field of view, and often significantly wider than that. If you've got a camera that's in the corner of a room and you want to cover the whole room like wall to wall, you need a 90-degree field of view to cover from those two walls and everything in, which is like if you compare a 90-degree field of view to a typical camera, like if you grab a proper, like DSLR or whatever, or even a phone camera, they don't have 90-degree field of view. It's much narrower than that. Yeah, and Scott says, interchangeable lens cameras are bloody expensive. Yeah, and as Stephen says, the lens is important. 2.8mm versus 4 versus 6mm. Okay, now, we have not, we've kind of talked around the original question, but I don't think there is really a cheap/simple way to do this with a really cheap PTZ camera. I think you'd need a camera, well, at the very least, what you need is a camera that you're going to be able to send commands to. So if the camera does not have the ability to do motion detection and object tracking and all of that sort of thing internally, then that task has to be done externally, which means commands have to be sent to the camera to make it move, to center the object or whatever it is that you're looking for. So at the very least, you need a camera that allows you to control it externally and not require something like ActiveX controls in a browser window in order to do it. You need something that you can send commands to it, like using a REST API or some interface that you can generate messages from software to do it. So I think it's going to be a fiddly job. Now, if you build your own PTZ system, well, not so much zoom, because zoom is a function of the camera, but if you build your own pan tilt system, now that actually gives you a whole lot more possibilities and flexibility. It won't be as neat as like one of those little half dome PTZ cameras that you attach up near the ceiling and it moves around. But if you get something like a servo driven pan tilt base and attach something like a Node MCU to it, then you can control it with a Node MCU and make it point in different directions. And I wonder if I've got an example. I know I do have an example. I'm just wondering where it is. It was sitting on the shelf right there. It is sitting on the shelf right there. As I walk away from the camera, I did a quick double take to make sure I wasn't attached to a microphone or anything. That would have been not so good. It's kind of, hang on, I'm going to go to the overhead view. Oh look, prototyping boards for the Rack 32. Move that out of the way. So this has been sitting around for years. So what you can see here is a stack. There is an Arduino compatible board on the bottom. There's a Proto Shield in the middle. And then this is an OLED and joystick shield stacked on top, and I was just using that for the joystick. That's the only reason it's there. I didn't have a display on it, and that is controlling. So the board that is in the middle is powering and controlling these two servos, and they can move. In fact, I wonder if this even works. Let's what do I want? I want to turn on one of my lab supplies. Get some power happening here. How many Coulomb people do we want to send it? Let's send it 9 Coulomb people. Turn it on. Woohoo! It powered up. Oh, it works. Amazing. That is, it is literally years since I plugged this in. So look, you can see all the dust on this. There's dust sitting on top. So what we've got is, it's very simple really. It's just an Arduino controlling 2 servos, but the servos are in these little folded steel brackets, and the servo horn for the bottom one is attached to the second bracket. So this joystick tells the Arduino to send different commands to these servos so that we can move them around. And then by moving the joystick, we can move the servo. So you can imagine, well, that's as far as that one goes. You could imagine that if there was a camera attached here somewhere, where would you do it? Well, conceptually, the camera would be where this thing is. So this paperclip, I actually had this set up as a pointer, and the idea was to put a laser pointer on this so that I could use this to drive the laser pointer and point at different things. So the camera would be attached here, and you could raise and lower the camera. So you got tilt control, and you can rotate the camera. So you got pan control. So you could point it at different things. And it's mechanically not quite the same, but conceptually this is kind of the way the PTZ cameras work. They typically have a frame inside that can rotate to give you the pan, and then there is another system that sits inside that ring which gives you the tilt. And if I hit reset on this, it'll probably go back to its starting position. Reset. Yeah. Okay, so that's gone back to just vertical, which is its starting position. Yeah, but if you did something like that, in place of this, so at the moment I've got an Arduino on here, but this could be a Node MCU board, then you could control the PT base. I nearly said PTZ. You can control the PT base from the Node MCU, and you could be sending it commands over USB or network or whatever is appropriate. Yeah. Okay, what have you all been talking about while I've been sitting over there at the workbench and ignoring the chat? Not because I wanted to, just because I can't see it from over there. Okay, so Aaron says, I'd say it's more important to have camera detection with zoning to minimize the compute requirement, but also the amount of false detections on cheaper cameras. Yeah, so zoning. The way, and you can also do masking. Well, masking and zoning, it's they're kind of related concepts. In the software for a lot of cameras, what you can do is mask out certain areas so that they will not trip the motion detection. And that might be, for example, in fact, I've done this. I've got a camera which is, I'm just looking up at my screen where I can see it. I've got a camera mounted on the front of my garage that looks out over the driveway, and there is a tree to the right of the car that waves in the wind. So that often sets off the motion detection. So in the camera software, I've masked off that area of the tree, and any motion that is in that area, it just ignores. So it doesn't activate its little motion detection thing. And it only detects motion in the area where the car is and directly around the car. So yeah, you can do that sort of thing. All right. And Alistair says, which was in a reply to Scott, there's a project out for mounting an ESP32 cam to read and interpret Myers using machine learning. Typically, fab a 3D printed mount into the meter to hold the camera and occlude stray light. Interesting. Yes, very cool. Now, yes, and a big thank you. So, Mr. Fixit says, I see you have done a lot of work on the OXRS website. It's starting to take shape. I'd like to correct you on that. I have not done a lot of work on the OXRS website. That work has been thanks to the brilliant efforts of people like Aaron, who is just down there in the chat as well, and Ben, and there have been some really good contributions from Moyne, who I don't know is in the chat. I haven't actually seen Ben in the chat either. Yes, that I can't take any credit for that at all. All I can do is look at it and go, that's really cool. In fact, I'm just going to pull up that. Yes, thumbs up to the OXRS web crew. I'm going to pull up the current version of the site. I did actually, I submitted a pull request to the site to add a new abbreviation to it. Sorry, while I'm kind of talking to you, I am loading it. It's taking a while to load. I wonder if, like, my browser is just sitting here spinning. Scott says, Dagnabbit, need to build a beer retrieval robot. Miss things on stream when my beer gets empty. So, alternative solutions, bring more beer. Or beer fridge next to the computer. Why is the site not loading? Okay, I don't know. I'm just going to try. Oh, okay, now it's loading. Let's load it in 1.1 seconds. Yeah, I think my browser was doing something silly. So let's just. I actually haven't even looked at the site for a couple of days. So let's see what's changed on it. Hit desktop and drag this across so that we can see it. make it about there. Yeah, make it about there. What have we got? Yeah, so the front page is a little bit more of an explanation now of what it's all about. And what have we got? Docs, hardware. Quite a few of these pages now are still blank, but now that so much work has been put into creating the basic structure of the site, and a fair bit of it is trying to figure out where things should go, like how the menus should be structured, what makes sense, then we can start filling in some of this content. And for example, there are libraries, but the docs don't show any there. And guides, getting started. Everything I'm looking at looks like there's nothing in it, but there are actually things in here if you get to the right places. Markdown guide, yeah, there's stuff here. So for writing writing content to go into this, you can use Markdown, and there are examples in here of how to do that. And there is also a really cool thing, I might show it on a different page, doc template. So this is a template that you can use. So what you can do is check this out in Git. If you want to contribute to this, there are a few different ways to do it. You can check it out in Git and make edits and then submit a pull request. And if you're familiar with Git and you're really comfortable with it, that's great. That's a good way to do it. But that is a barrier to people that don't typically use Git. So there are a couple of other things you can do. There is this edit this page thing at the bottom. Now I'm not actually going to edit this page, but I'm going to click on this and show you what happens. So what this does is go directly to the file that is generating this page. So if you wanted to edit that, as you can see, I just clicked it. That's all I did. And I end up here in this editor, and I could say, danger warning, if I wanted to change the text on here and edit this page, I could do it. You can go to preview and see, oh look, it now says Danger Will Robinson because I've gone to the preview. So you can edit it directly in here and then see the preview. And then when you want to, you type your description in here of what change you've made. And well, in this case, because I have privileges for it, I can commit this directly to the main branch. But what you would do is typically you would have, unless you're on the core team, and if you're on the core team, then you know you're on the core team, you won't have that permission. You'll only be able to submit a pull request and click on propose changes, and then it goes into a triage area, and then someone with authority can click yes, accept, or edit, or reject, or whatever. So if you do want to make changes to the site, you can do that through that mechanism. You don't have to clone the whole site source and then make your edit and then commit, all that sort of thing. You can do it just by clicking through this, which is really super cool. I'm just going to close that without making any changes. And glossary. Okay, so one thing I actually changed, but I haven't merged yet, is remove these apostrophes. So we've got a glossary with a couple of things in here, and makers. Oh, cool. So this ended up going in. What we've got is the maker designators, so that what we can do is uniquely identify boards and libraries and all of those sorts of things. So if you want to have an ID assigned to you, then you can do that. You can do that simply by clicking, same as before, go to the makers list, edit this page, come into here, just follow the format, add a new row, put yourself in, click on propose change, and then we will most likely add you to the site. So James says, I never remove apostrophes. No, not from your last name. No, apostrophes need to stay where they're appropriate. What was I doing? That's right, acronyms. Steve, there needs to be there should be a thing in here. Steve. Let's let's change this. So that one just says Steve, and I'll say streams that end very eventually. And I will do explain Steve, and I will do commit directly to main. Yeah, leave dangerously. Okay, so that change has now been added into there, and the site needs to be deployed. So if we, like, I'm going to close this now. So I've done that commit. If I reload this, the change will not actually be here because the site needs to be redeployed for that change to be visible. But basically, as I've demonstrated, that is how easy it is to make changes to it. So it's kind of like bordering on being a wiki almost, which is cool. A wiki with a neatly managed structure, which I think is a good balance because it means that content remains within like a curated structure with the navigation and all the different areas of the site being under the control of the core team that is putting this together, and but it still gives the opportunity for people to put in their own contributions as easily as possible. So where were we? There was hardware. Okay, so hardware. Now, I went to this hardware section. So what should be in this section is, so as I was clicking through this top level menu before, so hardware, firmware, and libraries, each of the pages that I went to, like hardware, firmware, libraries, they all say to do content to be created. That is just like the splash screen almost for that section, or the index for that section. But over here on the left, you can see there are already some things listed. So if you go into hardware under the controllers section, there is the Rack32 already listed. And, oi, where'd it go? Is that link actually going anywhere? Oh, yeah, okay, it's just taking a long time to load. I don't know why it's doing that. All right, so, ooh, Aaron says it now has continuous integration and auto build and deploys for the core team. Nice. Just refresh and it'll be there. Oh, Mr. Fixit says, got to run. I'm selling tools to pay for my XRS LCS. I'll catch up when I get back with money. Run, Mr. Fixit. Sell those tools. No, actually, before you do, what tools are you selling? I always want tools. Tools are awesome. Now, what was I? That's right. What were we doing? We were looking at this, and I think it might have been because it was in the process of deploying when I clicked that. So now, as Aaron said, it can now do continuous integration, etc. So there is the page for the Rack32, and what we want to do is put information in here about each of the boards, so that if you're wanting to build your own rack mount device, you can come in here and look at information about chassis, about control boards, about the displays, about different I/O boards and things that you might want to use. So at the moment, this is the only control board that's in here, but there are going to be more added because there are like the dentistry's stuff will possibly end up in here, and yeah, there'll be more, I think. So it's got information about it, like features and what firmware you can run on it and what libraries. And then input devices is just a template at the moment, but output device, oh, here we go. So at the moment, input devices and output devices are just templates. Input and output devices includes the Bedrock UIO board. So this, as I think was pointed out last time, Mr. Fixit, a 5-drawer mechanics tool cart. Ooh. I'd like one of those, but unfortunately I have a lack of room. My garage is so full of stuff. So this is the smoke detector management board in the photo, and then It's got, yeah, it was originally designed for integration into Clipsource Firetech series smoke alarms. And then firmware information, etc. So, over time, hopefully there will be a lot more in here. So there will be both information about the different devices that you can put into your rack mount projects, and also about the software that you can use. So here, for example, there is information on the state monitor software, and this is the software that's used for things like the light switch controller, like examples on the communications, the events that it publishes, what hardware it runs on, pinout information, lots of interesting, useful stuff here. So if you're wanting to build your own light switch controller, there is lots of reference information. And I should report back. My house has been running, so half my house has been running on this hardware with this firmware for the last week, which is good. Lack of room, that's why I'm selling it. Yes, we've got the same problem, is to fix it. So, and so far it hasn't failed. So right now, what is inside, I'll get this out, sliding away. I wonder if I did take a photo of it. So switching back to the overhead camera view for a moment, I'm going to show you first what it's meant to look like. So this is the current prototype, just in the open frame like template that hasn't had any work done on it yet. So rack 32 on the right, Ethernet, USB, power indicator. On the left we have the display, and in the middle we have the I/O board, which has got the RJ45 sockets on it. So I've kept this one out because this is like at the moment, this is the definitive prototype, the most recent up-to-date one. But I wanted to get some time on my house with actually running it for real. So what I did was, I'm going to, while you're staring at that, I'm going to open a folder and look at my photos. Photos, camera uploads in Dropbox. Where is that? Because I took some photos of the somewhat dodgy, I should say, more than somewhat, the very dodgy setup that is currently in my rack. Where is it? It won't be far back. Is this? Oh no, this is with the proper one. Where is the dodgy one? Somewhere back here. I've got photos of the dodgy one. No. What is going on? I don't know. I'm looking back through. It's got to be here somewhere. When I stuck it in the rack, which I'm pretty sure was last Sunday, it was after the live stream, I wonder if I put the photo somewhere else. Okay, this is really riveting, isn't it? Exciting to be just listening to me searching through my my old photos. It must be somewhere else. Is it in? Maybe I moved the. Maybe I moved the photos. In projects, maybe. Was it in LSC? No. I'm going to stop chasing this in a moment because this is not exactly exciting. All right, where are we? Firmware, LSC. I'm sure I took photos of this. Is it still on my phone, perhaps? Phone. Anyway, the point of what I was trying to... Oh, there's something else I can show you too. That's cool. Oh, there it is. There's the photo. I've got it on my phone, so why am I not seeing that in here? It's because I just wasn't looking properly. I wasn't using my eyes. Okay. I'm gonna share the, got to go back to desktop sharing for a second. Here we go. Okay, so this is a photo. Oh, I've got to bring that up so you can see a bit more. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. All right. Now, what you can see in here, and yes, it is a mess. It is a cabling mess. I did a live changeover with moving from one light switch controller to the other. Now, what you can see, the top, this black row here, what you can't quite see, just out of the field of view, right up the top here, that's a power over Ethernet injector. Below that, this black one, this patch panel, these are the connections that go out to the light switches around this part of the house. Not all of the sockets are populated, but, and some of them are actually populated with Ethernet, because this is one of the legacy annoyances with my house. Because my light switches were originally all on Ethernet, they were all running power over Ethernet, and there was a microcontroller with, like, embedded within every light switch. They were all just wired back to the patch panel like any other Ethernet device. And the result is that on this patch panel that you can see here now, what's going on out there? Oh, I think that's I think that's my daughter with a hose washing a fish tank. She's making a big racket right outside the window. Hopefully you can't hear it. So this patch panel is a mix of Ethernet connections going to actual Ethernet endpoints like cameras and stuff, and light switches which are not Ethernet. And what I really should do is rewire this. Like, what I need to do is separate it out and have another patch panel which is just for light switches, because if you plug the wrong thing into the wrong socket, it's not good. So these connections, these yellow cables that are coming out, the yellow patch leads, what I've done is used yellow patch leads for light switch connections to distinguish them from Ethernet. So what I've got here is the general color scheme is blue is regular Ethernet, yellow is light switches, red is power over Ethernet, so red for power. And you can see a few cables just hanging, dangling there, going nowhere. So connections to light switches across here, coming off on the yellow patch leads. Below that, this black rack unit here, this is one of the rack units that was built as part of that video a few years ago that kicked this whole thing off. The DIY Arduino light switch controller. And over in the left here, just obscured by these cables, that is where the Ether Mega is mounted. But I can't remember if this one has an Ether Duo in it or an Ether Mega. I think it's an Ether Mega. I did one with an Ether Duo, one with an Ether Mega. And so that's where the Ethernet and the power over Ethernet connection goes in. Then there is an OLED here. So this is actually an OLED screen rather than just a TFT like LCD. So there's an OLED. There are the RJ45 breakouts in here. And so this black device is the rack mount light switch controller that has been running the west half of my house for years and years. Scott says Keystone patch panels and you can color code the jacks themselves. Yeah, that would be really cool. So I don't know what that's in relation to. I did a what look? Okay. I don't even understand that comment. All right, so this unit is what was running it and has been running for the house for years. Then I wanted to switch over. So this white one that you can see down here, the white prototype that I've shown on previous live streams, before I went to this prototype, this is the one that I did where I did the cutting out 2 weeks ago or whenever it was, and then put all those parts in it and showed it on the last live stream. This is the prototype from before that. It's when I had the Ethernet on the left with the pass-through. I had a board in here with menu buttons on it, and there was a little OLED mounted behind the front panel. But I wanted to be able to get some hours of testing in place and actually like run this thing for real, depend on it, and make sure that it is doing exactly what it's meant to. So what I did was pull out the old OLED board that was in here with the control buttons, and I hot glued, yes, actually literally hot glued the LCD module. So this display module that's right here, and you can see there with Ben and Moyne's firmware running on it. This is the firmware that does the detection on all of the inputs, and you can see the little matrix on the bottom that shows the status of all of these inputs. It's reporting its IP address and its MAC address, etc. And so there is in the back of this unit, there is a rack 32. It doesn't have its front panel exposed. It's physically mounted on standoffs. So what I did was I drilled holes through the base plate and used standoffs and mounted a rack 32 behind it. And then internally, from this LAN port right here, that's a pass-through connector. There is a little patch lead that goes from the back of that connector and it plugs into the rack 32. So essentially what you're looking at there, even though physically it is different to this one in its layout, it is electrically exactly the same, because I wanted to test it as close as possible to the current or the most recent version. So it's running that URC firmware. Well, you can see on here it's running URC version 1.0.0, and it's on a rack 32. It's using the pass-through connection. It's using the current LCD. So what I did was shove this into the rack with a little bit of a gap, because this plastic enclosure, the one that is in the middle here, this one has actually started to sag over the years, and this is the real downside of using ABS type enclosures. I think it's ABS. I'm not even sure what this is made of. So the plastic tabs that are on the end here and that mount into the rack frame, they are under a lot of torsional force because the enclosure goes back into the rack. There's nothing supporting the back of it, and so the weight of it tends to make the back sag, and the whole thing has twisted. This thing has been in that rack for years now, and over time the back of it is hanging down on a bit of a funny angle. Dodgy says, I hate when people hide things directly in front of me. Yeah, and I hid it from myself, which makes it even worse. Yeah, so just as a test thing, what I did was I stuck this in the rack and gave it a bit of a gap, and then these yellow leads used to go from the patch panel and be plugged into this old light switch controller. And what I did was I just unplugged it, plugged it into the new controller, and then in Node Red I changed the configuration so that it would understand the events coming from this new firmware, and it would be able to update the state of the output controllers and things in my switchboard. So right now in my Node Red configuration, what it's doing is actually looking for both MQTT messages. It's looking for the messages from the new controller using the new firmware, and it's looking for the messages from the old controller with the old firmware that I wrote however many years ago it was. I'm actually kind of curious. I'm gonna just move that out of the way. When did I do that? I'm gonna look up episodes, because that's probably a reasonable indication. I think it was one of the early ones. Gear run quietly. Building an Arduino home automation controller, was that it? Episode 12? No, it was not long after that though. That was doing an output controller. The light switch controller. Oh, there it is. Episode 25, Arduino home light switch controller, which was, it's not that long ago. October 2017 was when I did that one. Although the actual original version was was built sometime before that. That's when I did that video about building it. And I think I did that. So when I made that video, I think that was the second one that I built, because I wanted to make one for the other end of the house. Yeah, so that's been running the old firmware for years. So the general plan here was that it was giving myself a bit of an insurance policy. So I've now moved over to running the west end of the house off this new controller, which is running the current hardware, the rack 32, the current firmware. But if this fails, all I've got to do is unplug the yellow cables, plug them into this controller, and everything will keep right on working. Because this is actually still running. It's not showing anything on the display. There's no real indication that it's powered up, but it is running. So all I'd have to do is plug the cables back in, and the messages would come in on the other topic with the old format, but Node-RED can recognize both. So yeah, it'd keep working. But I'm very happy to report that so far there has not been a single glitch. This has been running since, I think it was last Sunday afternoon, after the live stream, was when I did the conversion and got all of that set up. So yeah, it's been running flawlessly since then, which is nice. Very, very nice. So thanks to Ben, Moyne and Aaron in particular for all of the work on making that do what it's meant to. Now, where are we? Where am I? I don't know. Oh, that's right. I was poking around. Let's close that now. I was poking around on this. What have I missed in the chat? Scott, more problems with getting older. You lose your hair and forget what year you did stuff. So far, I have forgotten. What have I can't remember what I've forgotten. Yes, I've lost my hair. I forgot what year I did the controller. I forgot the name of a person. I forgot. Yeah. So James said, do you have to send a change notification to your family on those changes? Yes. My family is patient. I try to pick times. I try to pre-test as much as I can. So actually what happened with this one was when I was doing the conversion, one of the nice things about doing this sort of dual sort of redundant setup is that I could put the new controller in place, and then I could selectively switch individual light switches over. And the actual the time required to change each one over is only a few seconds. It's unplug the cable, plug it into the other controller. So it's like literally 3 seconds or something of downtime per light switch. So what I did was, because that controller is in the west end of the house, which is also where I am right now, I could do things like, can you see it? What's your field of view? If I go to here, no, you still can't see it. Anyway, I've got light switches in here. So there's one on the wall just out of your field of view over there. It's just to the other side, that way, the other side of that wall of little drawers. There is a light switch which controls the lights and fan and various other things in the lab in here. So what I did basically was put the second controller in, switch the cable for that light switch only, and then I did all the messing around in Node-RED. So I looked at what messages it was sending, I got the node set up so that it could interpret the message properly and change the state of the light. And once I had it all working properly in here and I could use that light switch to turn the lights in the office on and off, I converted the switches in the garage and a couple of other places that no one else would actually notice, like while I was doing it. And then I went through and made all of the other changes in Node-RED, and so it was then set up to be working with either controller. And then it's just a matter of check out the patch leads, plug them into the new one, everything keeps working. Okay. So Chris said, oh, the hookup. Thanks for coming along. That's what YouTube videos are for. I reference my old videos all the time to figure out how I did stuff. Yes, it's a form of self-documentation. I have done that on many an occasion. It's actually kind of embarrassing how often I look back at things like using... there was some time a little while ago, I looked up my Tasmatizer video, and there was... yeah, I've looked up... There was an issue with trying to find the path to the Tasmatizer program after installing on a new computer, and I thought, how do I find where it is? I know, there's a tutorial for that. So yeah, I do sometimes look up my own videos. Rob, I'm glad you have that problem too. Chris asked, one's Node-RED auto start after power fail. So I have Node-RED running in a Docker container on a Synology NAS, and the NAS is on a UPS. So I'm just thinking about let's sorry, I'm thinking about pulling up what I've got on my NAS. Switch to this tab. Yeah, let's switch to that. Ah, that's not what I was intending to do. I'm going to just change desktops unexpectedly. No, I want to be on that desktop. What are we looking at? Okay, here we go. So let's have a quick look around in here. I'm just going to switch to screen sharing again. Oh, Chris said, what's the delay before operational? It does take a few minutes because the Synology takes a while to boot. What have I got here? Desktop. Yes, that's what I want to share. So what we have here, I'll move the chat out of the way, and yeah. Oh, it doesn't really matter. Doesn't matter if you can't see that. So resource monitor. So I've got a couple of storage volumes on there. So volume 1, which is what I use for just general storage. So that's got a number of shares, and it's also where I store things like the permanent content for the Docker containers. So one of the issues with Docker is setting it up so that with containers in general, it's setting it up so that you have persistent storage. Like you have a file system that is not going to go away next time you pull down the latest image and then start running it. So in volume 1, so I've got, what is it, 10.2 terabytes used. I've got another 17 terabytes available. And then volume 2 is where I have all of the backups. So there's, that's just under 8 terabytes in total available there, or 7 terabytes. By the time it's had all of the file system overhead taken out of it. That is the time machine storage. So all of the Macs and devices around the house all back up to that. So what have we got? Docker. Let's have a look in Docker. So in here, I've got Unify controller and Eclipse Mosquito running. So what I've got is Unify controller obviously is to manage the network, and then I've got Mosquito, so MQTT running in an image on there, and as you can see it's using 3 megabytes of RAM and approximately 0% of the CPU. Mosquito is really lightweight. I've got Grafana running, I've got a Home Assistant installation running, which is actually doing absolutely nothing. Like it's running and I can log into it and, you know, change stuff on it, but that's basically experimental. I don't actually have that controlling anything in my house right now. There's InfluxDB for persistent storage of sensor data, which then of course gets pushed into Grafana. And oh, speaking of which, shout out to my my good friend Hugh, who finished up at Amazon last week and is starting at Grafana tomorrow, I believe. A new job working at Grafana, which sounds pretty cool. So I hope in future, hopefully I'll be able to hassle Hugh and he can answer all my questions about Grafana. So Node-RED I've got running here. So this is taking 140 meg of RAM, not very much, it's a very small image. And approximately, once again, 0% CPU at the moment. And that's where my Node-RED is running. And these images are all set to Sion just asked a question I'll get back to in a moment. So these images are all set to run, these containers will all run automatically. What have we got here? And there are probably a couple here, like there's an OpenHAB one that's not running. There's another image, there's a second mosquito image which is not running. Now the reason for this one, now what you would have seen a number of times, as I've been messing around with things like the Wi-Fi interface on the multimeter, when we've been playing around with that sort of thing on the stream, I've been configuring to publish to a test MQTT broker. So I have two brokers that I care about in my house. I have one, and that's that's running in this container here, Eclipse Mosquito. That is the one that is running the stuff that I care about, and it is it's running authentication and my home automation devices and things connect to that. Then I have another one which is running on a different IP address, and it is running without authentication, without encryption. It's basically like the simplest possible, allow everything, just pass messages around broker. And what you've seen when I've been connecting to MQTT on live streams, that's the one I'm connecting to, and it's where I just do basic tests of devices. So if I want to do something like do a publish or a subscribe in a terminal and it's on the live stream so you can see it, I don't want to expose all of the credentials and things for my proper broker, and so I just use it's the 111 broker. And that's just because internally the IP address is on .111, and right now, in fact, not just right now, for years and years, that broker has been running on a Raspberry Pi, which is sitting in my East switchboard. And it's, I haven't even looked at it for ages. And so what I've got here is an image which I started setting up, and then I never really made it live. The idea is to replace the mosquito that is currently running on that Raspberry Pi with this Docker image. So, and as you can see, it is stopped. So right now, I still have my, my dodgy test broker running on the Raspberry Pi. And I'm not even sure what else is running on that Raspberry Pi. That was actually the Pi that used to run my entire house. And then progressively what I've done is taken things off it. It used to be running InfluxDB and Node-RED and OpenHAB and everything else all on that one Pi. And then progressively I've taken some of those services and moved them over and put them into Docker containers. And then over time, that Raspberry Pi has ended up just sitting around and not doing a whole lot. It's pretty much the only thing it's doing now is running my test mosquito broker and MQTT broker and some random scripts that run on cron jobs. Things like I've written code that checks whether it is bin night and then which bin is going out, like whether it's recycling or green waste, and then it turns on the LED tile in the kitchen as a reminder. And that is running on the Raspberry Pi still. So one of my jobs It's one of those jobs that there's no motivation to do it, but there are still a few small parts of my house that are dependent on that random unmaintained Raspberry Pi that's sitting inside the switchboard that I haven't even done like it's running, what is it running? Raspbian, I think. It'll be an old Raspbian. I haven't even updated it for ages. So it's out of date. It's probably, its SD card is probably getting rather tired. It could fail at any time. I should do something about that. I'm talking myself into moving it up the priority list a little bit. Okay. Right. What was I doing? That's right. Sion had asked a question, which was, did the Unify update you spoke about last week fix the 5 GHz Wi-Fi switching issue? And the short answer is I don't know, because... Hang on, I'm going to switch cameras again briefly. And that is because I am switching to a different... No, I don't have that tab open. I was looking for the UI for my Unify. I actually have not re-enabled. Oh, I hate this. I've got to fix the SSL on that. Oh yeah, one thing I was talking about before. Maybe before I get into that whole Unify thing, I'm just going to mention this other thing. So, back to desktop. I'm not even sure if I'm going to be able to demonstrate this properly. But if I go into, let's pick one. Maybe this one. It's not running, so I should be able to have a look in here. All right, volume. What have I got? Volume, mount path. No, I don't have a mount path set on that one, so that's no good. Let's try this one. Does this have a mount path set? It does. Okay, good. So what you can see in here is there are volumes configured and the mount path. So /mosquito/log/mosquito.log. You can see that location there. That location, that file in particular, is going to be mounted inside the container when it's running, and it is going to be, can we expand this? Yes, and it is going to be mounted at, sorry, that's where it's going to be mounted. This is what's going to be mounted. So docker/mosquito111/mosquito.log. So this is where the file is physically stored on the file system within the NAS, and then it gets mounted inside the container at that address. So what happens is that when Mosquito runs, it writes to this file and it thinks that it's writing to its own local internal file system, but it's not. It's actually writing onto the file system of the NAS itself. And the same thing, so this data directory is mapped and the Mosquito configuration is mapped, because what happens is that if you pull down the new version of the container and then you kill off your old container, you start it again, and then you've got a new image running, everything that was stored inside the file system of your old container is gone. All your data is lost, your configuration is lost. So that sort of stuff needs to be persistent. So what this is doing is storing those critical things on the file system of the host, which in this case is the Synology NAS. So what I can do is pull down the newest image of, in this case, Eclipse Mosquito, and clear the old one and launch the new image, and it will come up with its previous configuration. The log file will be there, the data directory will be there, and everything should work. So so I'll get out of that and go into, what am I looking for? Control panel? No, storage manager, something like that. Somewhere in here, storage manager. Or is it? No, it's the file. What have I got in here? No. I've got to think about where it is. Is it file station? I don't mess around in here enough to really know my way around. Yeah, here we go. So inside NAS 1, so this is inside volume 1. we have a directory called Docker, and then inside that, I've got the subdirectories. So what I did was create a directory called mosquito111, and this is the one that was just being referenced that I was showing you a second ago. And inside that, there we have it. There's the mosquito log file, there's a data directory, there's the config directory. And so all of this persistent data is being stored on the file system of the Docker host, and then accessed by the container. So that way, when the machine reboots or whatever, or containers are updated, everything just stays the same and it keeps working. Anyway, that's right. What was I about to answer? Chris asked. Okay. So some questions here. So I'll get back to Chris's question. Some Call It Fun said, does Synology support cloud backup for selected items to prevent against data loss due to fire, etc.? I think it does. So it's got a whole lot of different backup options. And where is it? Is it in here? No. Control panel. Come on. Backup. No. Oh, it was there. Why is the search thing? No, I'm not in that one. Why is the search thing so bad? Update and restore. Update settings. Configuration backup. No, there is also a system backup. There are plugins you can get. And I'm sure I have at least one of them installed. Oh, the Cloud Sync. So there are a couple of things you can do. Hyper backup, yep. You can configure it to, if you have a USB disk plugged into the back of your NAS, it can do backups to that. But then of course you've got capacity issues. So I do it using, this is a big subject. I use rsync, and I have external USB disks. So I've got some 8 terabyte external disks which are connected to a computer. And what happens is the computer mounts the drives off the NAS, and it uses rsync to back up the NAS to the USB disks. And I also have a lot of stuff stored in Dropbox. So I've got Cloud Sync set up here, and it's saying, so it's linked to Dropbox and everything is up to date. But if I change something on my computer, let's, I'm gonna do something, what am I gonna do? Just to see what happens. I'm gonna make a thing. I'm gonna go into Dropbox and into, I don't know, into the Superhouse directory, that'll do. And then into, oh, okay. There's not much in this folder. Just to show you what happens. All right, I've got this folder, and I'm going to make a new folder and call it Demo for Livestream. And Dropbox should sync that folder, and then the NAS will discover that it needs to, I wonder if it will only do it when, oh yeah, there we go. So Cloud Sync. Downloaded Untitled folder, and in a moment it should update and it will say that it renamed the folder. I don't know if it'll actually notify about that. I'm going to delete that, get rid of that. So just to clarify, what you're looking at here, this window, this is on my local Mac, which is what I'm streaming from. And that virtual desktop in the background is the Synology NAS. So by creating a file here on my local Mac, it syncs to Dropbox, and Dropbox is syncing onto the Synology NAS as well. So it's I actually have multiple computers. I also have 2 computers in 2 different Amazon data centers, which are also linked to my Dropbox account, plus Dropbox itself keeps backups. So, oh yeah, there we go, deleted. So the NAS always has a copy of my Dropbox folder up to date on it. But that wasn't actually answering the question about backups. Yeah, so At the moment, I'm R-syncing off this onto another thing. If I was super rich, what I would do is have another Synology NAS and put it in a physically different location. So what I would do is get a second Synology NAS, power it up here, and just connect it to the same network and sync it across the Ethernet, so that, which would probably take quite a long time. But still, yeah, just sync it across the network so you've got two NASs with identical content, and then pick up one of those NASs and take it to someone else's house. Like I could take it to my sister's house or to Andy's house, or you know, someone that has lots of bandwidth and wouldn't mind me using a little bit of it, and then set it so that those two NASs sync via the internet. And that would be a good way of getting proper offsite backups. Unify network. Okay, what was I opening this for? That's right, so we were talking about, so Sion was asking about that 5 gigahertz thing. So if we go into, I'm not sure if I've said it here or in policy. So as you can see, these are up to date. The firmware on all my all my Unify devices is up to date right now. And if we go into AP Lounge, you can see the, what have we got? Radios, where is it set? Network services, RF, okay. 2.4 gigahertz radio. You can see there is 5 gigahertz is what? Enable minimum RSSI. Yeah, 5 gigahertz is actually turned off at the moment. I think it should be. I haven't turned it back on. I wonder, I'm not going to go poking around too much. I'm going to, yeah. If I poke around too much inside my my live Unify management interface, I'm probably going to expose stuff that you shouldn't be seeing, or that I shouldn't be exposing on a live stream. So let's not do that. But I have, so what happened was I updated the firmware on on one access point, and then I left it for a little while and it seemed stable, didn't have any problems for a few days. So I then updated the firmware on the other access point, and since then it seems to be stable, but I haven't yet turned on 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi. I've only got 2.4 gigahertz. Yes. All right. Scott says, I do everything other people use a NAS or Pi 4 on a surplus Dell T420. Yes, for when you have enterprise grade hardware at home. Yeah. Oh, Cable Tie says, I use TrueNAS, which was FreeNAS. TrueNAS? Interesting. Because I know of FreeNAS, but has that forked again to make TrueNAS? And it has support to offload to S3, for example. Yeah, so S3 is started off as an Amazon thing, and it's become kind of generalized as other people have implemented it. It's a bucket-based storage system. Okay. I need a drink. All right. Okay, let's see. Come on, that's better. Time for me to start paying more attention to the chat. So Sion said, have you moved to DSM 7 yet? I'm still on 6.2. I don't know. Hang on, I've still got my Synology. So DSM is Disk Station Manager. Let's go back here for a second and change to here. What am I on? How do we even find it? There's a control panel. Where does it show the version? Info Center. Here we go. General. What is the software version? DSM 6.2.4. So the answer is no. I am not on DSM-7. I didn't even know there was a major release. Uptime, 32 days. Yeah, okay. DSM Synology. Let's just see what happens if I look for this. Why is my computer being so laggy now all of a sudden? Synology. Has it been released? I don't know. Maybe this is one of those things where it doesn't do an auto, like it doesn't pop up the thing saying, do you want to release? Cookie options, yes. Download now. Anyway, this is a, thanks for pointing this out. I didn't even know that there was a major Synology release. Does it seem better? I don't know. I know nothing about it. If anyone has opinions, please stick them in the... why is this going really choppy all of a sudden? I think it's because my computer is pretending to be Peter and it's telling me that it is almost time to eat. Alright, I've got to try to close this tab. Close. Close. It's beach balling. That's not good. Alright, I'm just going to close that whole window. Go away. Go on. Alright, while I'm waiting for that window to close, and it looks like I'm frozen. I can see myself, I've frozen in the OBS preview window. Come on. I'm not trying to do anything strange here. Okay, close that. I'm going to just go around closing windows and hopefully it's going to make things better. You need to manually agree to update it. Okay. I have a feeling that my chat window is way, way behind. And I actually can't tell. Oh, just one version was free. Okay. Still closing windows. I'm going to close that window. And what else can I close? Okay, DSM-7 is a major change. All right, I'm going to stop screen sharing. Switch back to the front. Stream dead. Okay. One syllable at a time. I am slowly coming back. My computer is catching up slowly. You might be able to hear. I don't know. A lot still don't. Okay, so I don't even know if you can hear me right now. I'm going to keep talking. Peter says, don't just update to 7 unless all the applications you run will seamlessly migrate over. A lot still don't. It looks like my computer is not coming back. What can I do? What else can I do to what can I quit out of here that might help? It is really struggling. All right, I'm going to quit out of Discord because that is probably using a bunch of time, of CPU time. No, I'm still not back. And Scott says, anytime that John says, let's try this and see what happens. When chat is so far out. Yeah, full minute of lag between chat and live stream. This is really not working properly. Yeah, so the IoT access point, I'm actually going to wrap up this live stream because I don't think that this is going to recover. I think that OBS has probably freaked out. I'm just stuck in the video. Yeah, I think OBS has totally freaked out and I need to do something about it. So there was an interesting suggestion. Oh, interesting. Very interesting. This ties into it. OBS just popped up a message saying encoding overloaded. So in Discord last week, after the last live stream, there was a suggestion which I'm definitely going to try, which is to offload the encoding to the Stream Deck and not the Stream Deck, to the ATEM Mini. So what I would do is still use OBS for all of the compositing and bring the cameras in, and then use a display link adapter to give myself an extra video output, which doesn't need to be super fast. It can be reasonably low frame rate because it doesn't have the UI sort of lag feeling in it. And then use that display link output to go to an HDMI video splitter and take one side of the video splitter into the ATEM Mini and then have it do the streaming, and the other side go to a monitor so I can see. So basically I've got a screen that I can see. So I think I'm going to give that a try. But yes, as Scott says, at least the video didn't catch me with my mouth open. All right, I am going to wind up the stream because it is heading towards that time anyway, and OBS is totally dead. So, yes, Mr. X, Mr. Y says you're still frozen. I am frozen. So what, okay, it's just become a podcast. All right, I'm going to, what am I going to do? I think I'm going to bail on the live stream for this week. It's been fun, y'all. But it's ended in disaster, in technical disaster. And I am going to experiment with using the ATEM. So the suggestion on Discord was that it's the encoding process for the stream that is what is loading up my computer. And so the compositing part, which OBS can take care of easily enough, shouldn't be a big problem. And then if I have the output from OBS running as like a preview screen output that goes into the ATEM, it can do the encoding and run the stream. And then it should make things much easier and more stable and better. So I'm going to give that a go. In the meantime, thank you all very much for coming along to this random rambly live stream. I hope you have a fantastic Sunday, and I'm going to bail on it early and let you all go off and have lunch or go to sleep or whatever it is you need to do in your time zone. So, thank you very much, and as they said in the classic, goodbye, farewell, and amen.